Hello and welcome to this virtual roundtable from Foodservice Consultant Society International, FCSI. Today we are addressing innovation for workplace dining, also known as the business and industry B&I sector. I'm Michael Jones from Progressive Content and editorial director of FCSI's Foodservice Consultant magazine. Here is our latest edition, hot off the press. This roundtable is kindly supported by Welbilt and will address how new thinking, new processes and new technology are helping B&I operators and the consultants who work with them and design their food service spaces to either continue to operate during the COVID pandemic or to plan for life after this exceptionally challenging period. I'm very pleased to be joined today by our expert panel, two highly experienced consultants in this sector, a director of one of the world's leading food and support services providers, and the chief innovation officer of one of the industry's largest and most diverse equipment manufacturers. Let me ask each of them in turn to introduce themselves and to also tell us a bit about their own businesses. Liz, ladies first, can we start with you, please?
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Liz Forte. I'm the Health and Wellbeing Director at Compass UK and Ireland. So I look after the business and industry sector. I've got a background in FMCG, hospitality and leisure, and I've been with Compass for 3 years, so really focusing on marketing. But in the last year, my role's expanded to focus on health and well-being, and that's something that's increasingly important in the workplace. So we've got national sites, about lots of sites over the UK, national contracts, smaller contracts, a diverse estate, I would say. So kind of the business and the industry side, so office-based and then distribution and manufacturing.
Wonderful, thank you, Liz. And Laura, over to you, please.
Yes, I'm Laura Lentz. I'm with Culinary Advisors. I'm a design principal with our firm. We're based out of the Middle Eastern coast in the U.S. We practice a design consultancy. I've been with the firm now for 15 years, and my personal specialties are B&I and healthcare, but our firm does a really broad spectrum across all markets in design.
Fantastic. Thank you, Laura. And James, please.
And I'm James Camacho with Camacho Associates, and we're here in Atlanta, Georgia, with offices of 6 different locations now. And I'm a food service design consultant personally. We do some MAS, but mainly design. And April Fool's Day will be my 42nd anniversary working here in the company. So heck of a day to have an anniversary on. And we appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak with everybody today.
Thank you, James. Thanks for joining us. And Rick.
Yeah, thanks, James. And good morning again, everyone. So my job is really looking into the future for our equipment. I'm kind of the health and wellness director for our products, which range from ice machines, beverage, refrigeration, ovens of all types, fryers, grills, hot holding, and doing a lot of work in the coffee segment. In fact, that one's really on fire with COVID. And basically, we've got design centers around the world. We manufacture our products across those segments, and it's all about just keeping them relevant in this industry as it bounces forward into a new equilibrium, which we'll be talking about over the course of this panel.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you, Rick. Liz, let's come back to you, please. Can you give us an overview from your perspective at Compass as to how your teams, your clients' operations have been impacted by the pandemic? What have been the biggest challenges that your organization has had to face, and how have you helped to overcome those?
Great starting question. I think we've gone through phases, right? So I think at the beginning, as part of a global group, we could see what was happening in China, and so where COVID was hitting a bit harder earlier. So we could see that it was coming our way, but I still don't think people really knew what it was going to be like, and I definitely don't think we were prepared for almost a year of kind of lockdown situation. So I think that kind of short, sharp shock was happened for us all, and for us really how to stay open, because we support many key workers across the UK. So it wasn't an option to shut down and have people working at home. We're supporting kind of communications and distribution. So we've got some key clients in those areas. So actually working out a way to keep our team safe and to keep and keep them providing fantastic food for these guys all the way through. That was one of the biggest things that we had to get our heads around super quickly. So I think that was the first challenge. But then also making sure that we were opening in a way that was safe for everybody and that people understood it, but having much more visible cleaning and that kind of, just to kind of get people back and tick those boxes and then building on the other areas. I think that was the area that we were really looking at, and how we could manage those kind of touch points where you traditionally have a lot of people, but then still making sure that they could come in, have their food, have their drink, and be safe, and that there wasn't going to be any issues from that. I think one of the positive things that we've taken out of this is our customer satisfaction scores have really gone up over the past year. And I think in some situations, having that kind of normality of your regular team serving you every day and having a chat at the coffee machine and that kind of thing, that really has kept people going. And that's been really gratifying, actually, because our team have been working really hard through, everyone's had quite a challenging time. That was kind of one of the big things I think we had to try and overcome.
Fantastic. Good to hear. Thank you very much, Liz. Laura, on to you. As a design consultant, what have been the biggest challenges that your operator clients in B&I food service are currently facing, and how have you seen innovation helping them to navigate those challenges?
Well, I think we've seen a number of changing behaviors from people. And honestly, I think broad spectrum. Liz mentioned sanitation, which I think is the start of it, and I completely agree. I think it goes, all the way through. I think we have clients who are working through some big technology moves. I think what makes it all particularly challenging right now is it's sort of still a moving target. It's still in progress. And we don't really have much of any data to prove the case, to support the business end of investments or changes or a decision not to change. So I think what I've seen clients grappling with is just, how do we know that we're making the right decision? And I think that decision is right now, at least, very individual for everyone. I think they're having to make decisions about what their workforce looks like on-site and off-site, and the mixes and all of the opportunities within that. I think is really where everyone is at right now that I've seen. The flip side is we do have some clients who are already certain of what they're going to do. They're moving forward. We're progressing through designs with technology. They have plans for bringing folks back. So I think it's been very industry specific and marketplace specific. At least that's what we've been observing on this side.
Great. Thank you, Laura. James, what type of technology or innovation or equipment specifically has had a kind of significant impact on workplace dining food service for you and your clients this year? What's really pushed things forward in the sector and made a difference to the operations that you and your clients work with?
I think one of the main things that we're seeing is the contactless setup of things now these days, where we'll think about it too, even in a B&I situation or a corporate facility, we had huge salad bars before. We were doing more self-serve, and all of a sudden that's stopped. And I would say most consultants in the last few years, Laura, you throw in on this too, we've all been designing, sneeze guards that are self-serve or served. So that was, a good thing. We didn't know to do it ahead of time, but we were doing it so that all of a sudden, everything can be served. But they're also looking at how to do, like I said, the contactless serving and in preparation. One thing we've had people look at is how do they separate folks, who have been doing all the prep work. Do we have work tables where they can separate out or not? And I think, from an operator standpoint, for Liz too, that's something that we've all had to work through, is figuring out the number of people working in the kitchen has changed. And so many folks are now working not in the office, but remotely. So, I'm sure there's been a whole employee shift there. But that's been the main thing we're seeing right now, I think, is that accelerated contactless. What can we do without ordering or paying or, pre-ordering, kiosk ordering, or automatic pickup somewhere else,
Fantastic. Thank you, James. Rick, James just used the word acceleration there. From your point of view at Welbilt, how has COVID initiated any more intense development in innovation and accelerated that kind of things speeding up in terms of your R&D operations?
Yeah, I would say super accelerated. The biggest innovations are at the intersection of disciplines, food, technology, people, and in this situation, how it relates to the workplace. And so there's other factors going on in B&I, and food is one of the factors, of course, that we have to consider, but we have to look at the overall environment. But just to kind of sum up, I think that these disruptive innovations, which are accelerating, super accelerating, that sometimes we don't think of, but I think are going to have a big effect in the shadow of the pandemic, is connectivity, cloud computing, because people want to know what's going on now more in their kitchens than they ever did before. And there's no reason not to do it, because equipment can be connected. I see the emergence of artificial intelligence in a really big way, machine learning, where these appliances are smarter, they interact better with people, they're easy to learn. And then even things like virtual reality, augmented reality, we think of that as space shot. It's not. The ability to learn and transfer knowledge around the equipment is key. And we've got a lot of customers now that are seriously looking more at blockchain around fresh food. I think by the end of this decade, 90% of the fresh food supply chain will be on blockchain. And that ties all the way back to the tracking. So, back in the day, we all know HACCP and what that means, but it's on steroids now because people want to know what's in the food, where it comes from, and speed is of the essence. And the final thing I'll say is flexibility, because we said we don't really know what the new equilibrium is going to be like. So we have to be flexible for the future. So those are some of the things that are speeding up in our business as it relates to innovation.
That's a brilliant summation. Thank you, Rick. Liz, James mentioned before about salad bars, and we're seeing salad bars and buffets. They've been replaced in the last year, really, for now, I guess, with pre-portioned food, more grab-and-go options, while we've also seen COVID-secure food preparation and service in place in restaurants that have been redesigned to accommodate one-way systems and things like that. Now that lockdown is coming to an end in the UK, or certainly that's in sight, with people returning to work, do you see these elements remaining in place? And for you and your kind of perspective at Compass, what does the long-term future look like for workplace dining, and what will it be shaped by?
So we've seen, for example, breakfast, that all kind of the porridge and the cereals that are all self-served, they've all kind of gone away, and people are moving into cooked breakfast, for example, which is a served offer. And that might continue a little bit longer. And I think gradually we'll just work that through. But I think just in terms of looking at the space, that's what's really important to us. We've got clients who've got really expensive real estate. And actually, the traditional kind of, this is the breakfast service, this is the lunch service, means in a really big, often quite a big restaurant space, means that it's empty for a lot of the day, or the layout of it isn't conducive to using throughout the day. So actually really thinking about those spaces and why people are coming on, and I'm talking particularly about the kind of the business as opposed to the industry side here, so where it's more offices. But actually, people are not going to be coming in just to do emails at the desk, because they're going to do that at home. They're going to come and collaborate. I don't know about you, but in most businesses I've worked in, it's really hard to get a meeting room at the best of times. So suddenly, if you're having to get a meeting room, but you're still having to think about social distancing, there's a lot less meeting space. So that restaurant becomes really, really important, looking at how we use those spaces. So I think we'll start to see the design of the restaurants changing so that you can use them throughout the day, more kind of collaborative spaces, less of a kind of big open plan thing, and something that's a little bit more conducive to meetings, and something that really supports the social interactions. I think that's what we're working towards.
So let's bring in our designers here then to respond to that. So James and Laura, Liz just talked about looking at how we use those spaces. How are you designing back and front of house layouts in this sector to accommodate, say, the comments from Liz there?
Here's what we are seeing. We are seeing that the tolerance for waiting in a line, waiting in a queue within a servery, within those, like you just called them, Liz, sort of broader open floor plan serveries, the tolerance for that is gone. I think a lot of that was driven by, we're all very accustomed to using apps, curbside delivery, pickup, whatever it may be. But I think in general, we just don't see a point to it anymore. We see it as a waste, and we see it as a risk. The biggest shift that I think that also creates from an equipment and design perspective is that turnaround time. If I have a made-to-order station, I can't wait 5, 7, 12 minutes, as we had seen in a current project that I had where we're coming in and working there. So where before it was okay to wait to get superior quality food, that's really gone by the wayside. We now know that and believe and have seen that restaurants and everyone else can accomplish it. So I think that tolerance is gone. And I think the equipment then needs to react in order to be able to respond to that. So in designing, for example, speed methods like microwave convection ovens, which have obviously been around for a long time, are becoming critical, but also clamshells on griddles, larger cooking surface griddles, so that at breakfast I'm not having to stack eggs after sausage after French toast, but I can have different, a 5 or 6 foot griddle in order to be able to cook all at the same time to again get that throughput in a station. And then I think some other things that used to be sort of a choice, like remote food order pickup. James, you even had mentioned how you were handling technology. Those were before, I think they were thought about, they were hopefully included into designs, they were an element that was there, and certainly like remote food ordering and lockers were by and large around, maybe not on every project. Now, I think they're on every project. James, what have you seen?
Yeah, and I'm just sitting here thinking we're working on 2 different projects right now, one out in the Midwest and one down in South Carolina, corporate facilities. And they both have the corporate element, but they also have the factory, and that part of it together. And there's no POS stations. You either have the app on your phone or you go to a kiosk and you put in your order and then you go to the station and pick it up, which is different than what I've been trained and what I've been doing for years and years and years. Personally, for me, I'm having to rethink and go, okay, how is this going to work? And we're working with Compass on both of these projects to see how it's going to be delivered, how it's going to be ordered. And I think what we're looking to do is possibly have the one station that you may still have a little POS that we can roll out if we need to later. But and Laura, I'm sure you found this too. With a lot of the corporate facilities we're looking at right now, it's not necessarily that you're going into a serving area. You may go, it's more like a university or higher education. Here's your hot food, here's a deli over there, grill over there. We can have that throughout the dining room. It's not like you're just going into an area, and each station stands alone. So you're prepping there, you're cooking there, you're serving there. It's a little bit changed, but as far as walking the chicken through the kitchen, which is something my father taught me years ago, is you take that piece of chicken and it goes from the door to the cooler to prep to serving and dishwashing and everything back. That's still the same. We're still following that flow. It's just where it's going to is a little different these days.
Thank you, James. Rick, in response to that, giving us the manufacturer perspective of kind of how you guys are following the kind of walking the chicken through the kitchen, and also answering, I guess, Laura's point about equipment adjustments, right sizing, accounting for throughput, that kind of thing. How are you guys responding to that? How are you listening to the consultants you work with, the operators, to kind of, how does that feed back into how you're, I guess, adjusting your R&D or your output?
Yeah. Well, we're certainly listening, and part of listening is actually translating that into action, right, that we can take in the short, medium, and long term. And so it turns out, had a lot of solutions that were already existing that we weren't using. And so part of the sense of urgency was to deploy solutions we already had, because there wasn't time to invent. And that might have been things like ozone sanitation that we have built in our ice machines. We're putting them on serving stations. It's interesting because we are also fixing the bike as we're riding it, because there's still a lot of knowledge around the virus and how it actually spreads. And, the latest thinking by World Health Organization is that the aerosol, neutrally buoyant aerosols in the air, is really a primary form of transmission. And so I do think, as we all know, water is key to food service, and we go to great lengths on water for our ice machines. I think air purification, HEPA filtration is going to be key, and not just the central HVAC systems, which all those suppliers are taken care of, but in dining rooms. How are we going to reopen dining rooms so people feel safe? So if I were just to kind of summarize it, the listening has to translate to action, but also with a point of view on the future and where the industry is going in terms of the consumer in this quote unquote new normal. And, things like changing menu, plant-based protein is coming for sure. I mean, the environmental benefits of that can be, 100 times fold traditional food supply chains. And that changes actually cooking programs. We talked about accelerated cooking. That does its magic by translating digital information to the ovens. And so if I would just to kind of summarize the drivers, so, the consumers want clean everywhere now. They always wanted clean, but now they want super clean. So we went through this extreme disruption. And now the first thing we've done is connected the dots back into technologies that we already had as options that weren't really being sold significantly around surface sanitation with diversifying to air purification. And then I like what James said about the impact on kitchen design. The basics of kitchen design haven't really changed a lot, but the way it's being done is very different, right? Because you still have to deal with time and motion and food and people. I think the idea of movement and limited movement and acceptable workstations and the zero tolerance for the cube, that's certainly there. And as I just sum up it, to me, it's all about the flexibility to cope with this endemic situation. So when the pandemic is done and we're all vaccinated, there's going to be a permanent awareness to vulnerability to infectious disease. And it may not be the 19 strain, it may be the 23 strain. I mean, I hope not. But we're in a different type of mentality around that. And I think that a lot of that flexibility is going to come from embracing digital. Yeah. Because this equipment has to be flexible, it has to be multi-purpose, because we just don't exactly know what the future is going to be like.
Excellent. Thank you, Rick. Liz, Rick mentioned there, these changing pressures that operators now have on time, motion, food, and people. And obviously, we're talking about a period of extreme disruption here. But what is Compass's strategy with regard to implementing new equipment, and when do you do it? What are the biggest factors that influence that? Is it things like regulation? Is it external situations like COVID? Is it just based on budget normally? Is it timing? What tends to influence that, and when you look to kind of reinstall equipment?
I think it's a mixture of all of those, isn't it? And it's very much case by case basis. When you're looking at kind of the throughput of a building and capacity at the moment, some buildings might have reduced numbers, some might not, but it's really looking at what the customer need is there and how the client is using that building. So I'm just picking up on some of Laura's points about the kind of lack of tolerance for queues. Well, actually, that's something that we're going to see more of now. If you've only got one break, and it's 30 minutes, and in that time you've got to do a number of things, it's about really helping people get the most out of their breaks. So not queuing at all. So they can just pick up their food. So having a pre-order is amazing, but then you've got to make sure that you have the equipment to be able to keep that food hot in the right kind of setting and have a safe pickup point. So there's different kind of levers, I guess, that we could pull there. I think other things, so where you've got a really big distribution center, for example, it might take a little while to get from where your workstation is to get down to the restaurant. So it's about thinking about other points around the building. So it's, maybe extra coffee station, a better class of vending potentially, so that you can get fresher food more quickly. So I think a lot of it is about speed, but it's also about, the thing that we talk about a lot is that happy people deliver great results. It's not the other way around. So really helping to keep your workforce engaged, happy, productive, that's all really key. So all of those things that you can do in food, it's more than just the food, right? But this whole kind of food is a great enabler of connecting people, helping people take a break. We, talking a lot about physical and mental health, it helps to keep you healthy, but then also helps to keep you kind of mentally strong and resilient by helping you to connect with colleagues. So I think the equipment can support that, and digital technology is a massive enabler of all of those kind of things that get us to that great end game.
Wonderful. Thank you, Liz. James, as a consultant with a huge amount of experience in B&I at your consultancy, are operators, the clients that you work with, are they largely aware of the new technology options that are available to them out there? And are they responding positively to them? Is there a big education piece for you to do, or do they just want this stuff in as soon as possible?
I have found that they're on top of everything. when we go to meetings, we're learning from them because they're more immersed in the technology as far as the, kiosk ordering or app ordering and concept ordering, getting things out. And Laura, I don't know if that's the way you're finding things, but that's what we're learning right now. And Liz, I think, one of the things thinking about that whole thing and how and what you've got to do and how y'all are doing it now is customer service. Even though we're going to more contactless or, everything's being pre-ordered and you're just picking it up, instead of like, Laura was saying, you're standing there for 5 minutes, 6 minutes while somebody's actually cooking and preparing. You've got time then to interact with people. It's the whole customer service of, is it just, okay, you go here and pick up your food and nobody ever says anything, thank you, goodbye, have a good day or anything, versus are you still, or how do you go about still giving them that customer service while they're still, picking things up? And from your standpoint too, Rick, is, how do we, as consultants, what equipment is out there that we can design for keeping that meal hot, for somebody to pick up in a cubby or in some kind of little thing, so those are things that we're looking for y'all to help us with as well.
Thank you, James. Liz, did you want to pick up that point about contactless and how Compass is embracing that and kind of what you think the long-term future is for contactless?
I think initially when we've got our app that we use, and it's been really well received by clients because it was all about kind of safety, because to Laura's point about people being able to do it and pre-order, and it just fits in with them. So actually, rather than telling people it's breakfast at this time and it's lunch at this time, they're going to have what they want when they want it. And that's great, both sides, in terms of labour management. And it might be a case that, say, you only go into the office 3 days a week, you could order all your food the week before if you wanted to order your lunch. And actually, that's got massive benefits for both for the operator and for the client in terms of helping to manage and plan. So I think there's lots in there, isn't there, that can really help. And just picking up on James's points about customer service, I think it's about that flexibility that Rick mentioned. It's not necessarily about taking all of the customer service away. It's the flexible solution and being able to adapt to that quite quickly. So whether it's hospitality for a meeting, or it's, a quick coffee that you want, or actually you don't mind standing in a coffee queue and chatting because that's something that you need that day. So I think that whole piece is great. But having the contactless piece, I think that is something that we've all learned and we'll be embracing going forwards.
Thank you, Liz. Laura, do you think, from the perspective of your clients, that B&I is naturally a good fit for contactless in the same way that, say, I don't know, Stadia or healthcare food service might be? Do you feel it kind of works well with this sector?
I think so. I mean, I think what it does is solve for individuals who had shorter break times, individuals who had back-to-back calls on Zoom or other, software platforms like that. I personally think that a lot of that will continue. We will, we've all become accustomed to doing a lot more meetings, and those meetings being online. So I think the biggest niche that it will fill is that balance through the day for not having a lot of time, but still wanting to get a good lunch. One of the things that I think B&I will want to embrace, we're seeing this with a lot of clients. It started in my mind with how restaurants were able to withstand the pandemic. A lot of them narrowed down their menu. So instead of having, 60 different menu items, maybe it was 10 or 12. And I think we kind of all grew accustomed to that. I think the flexibility piece is key there. Maybe it's 10 or 12 items. Maybe it's not the same 10 or 12 items every day. So we're seeing flexibility in equipment so that we can vary menus from day to day. But I think B&I for a long time, its biggest struggle has been, how do I be everything to everybody all the time? I think through the pandemic, we have shifted as a group of individuals and as people, and I think we're going to be more tolerant of smaller menus. When it comes to contactless, I just think that's going to be popular because it fills a need that we hadn't really been able to fill before. So I think where individuals were maybe bringing food in from home because going to a servery would take an extended amount of time, maybe they'll make a different choice. It's just going to be a convenience, and it's going to fill more of a convenience need for folks than B&I was able to do before. I also think customers are going to be more accepting of it and more tolerant than we had been before.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Laura. Rick, a simple question. Do you think the future is contactless, or do you think we'll see some easing off of this after the pandemic has subsided?
I think it'll ease off. There will be contactless that stays into the future, but it's funny, on our front door, we've got security, we put in the foot pedal, and right after the lockdown, and even during the lockdown, when people would come in, they'd always use that. They didn't want to touch the handle, and now nobody uses that. And there's a sanitation station right when you walk in, so you can clean your hand. And so I think it's unnecessary contact is going to be eliminated. But I think that the practicality of and the risk associated with contact is going to be evaluated more and more. And it's impossible to have completely contactless. I mean, even with automation and robots coming on. So I think that each human contact is going to come under more scrutiny. And then there'll be a decision about should that be contactless or not.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rick. Changing gears a little bit here, but staying perhaps on the human side of things. Liz, a question for you. I love that analogy you made about happy food and happy people. How, from your experience, how can food inspire health, well-being, productivity, and how can a workplace restaurant play a part in helping people make healthy choices? How can a better environment help to improve what employees get served to eat?
So this is really exciting. We did a survey across all of our campus countries last year with Ipsos, a global eating at work survey. And actually what we found was that having a workplace restaurant is the second most important perk behind flexible working. Wow. So it's really important to employees to have that, and it can help them feel kind of more cared about, and it can help with retention of people as well. So we know it's important. But it's also important to get it right, especially at the moment where you might have previously you might have had an option to go to the high street or go outside. Actually, it's a great perk to be able to get affordable, delicious kind of food. And actually, we're all a bit more aware of our health nowadays as well. So both physical and mental health, and food can help with mood and can help for the mental health side, but it can also help fuel you for your day. So I've been looking at the different types of workplaces that you have, where some might need kind of more of a sports science look, because you might need more calories, but it doesn't mean that it has to be all kind of fish and chips all the time. If you need more calories, it can give you the right nutrients and the right balance, or where you want to be more careful. So I think making sure that you've got that flexibility, a great choice so that consumers feel in control. Rick and I were talking about this before, about looking at workplace well-being, and kind of a sense of autonomy is really important. So to feel that you can make your choices and you can eat what you want is great. We use nudging techniques, so we'll place healthier options first. We'll kind of put that on our point of sale. We'll help to push people, or we'll do healthy switches. So don't take away the white rice, but offer brown rice first and things like that, and give people information so they can make informed decisions. Or chefs suggest having this grilled as opposed to fried. So things like that will do quite a lot. And that's been really positively received. And similarly with plant-based as well, where people might have been a bit worried about plant-based products generally, actually doing lots of sampling and lots of engagement. And that's a really good way of moving that in. Brilliant.
Thank you, Liz. Quite the same question really to Laura and James. Are you seeing those kind of flexible options in workplace dining? Are you seeing those nudging techniques, or those kind of possibilities to help people think more about, I guess, health, well-being, nutrition in workplace dining?
I think so. And from a personal standpoint, Kathy and I got COVID back end of last year, and I found out actually I was having a heart condition during that time. We don't know if it was brought on by COVID or not, but all of a sudden I'm on the Mediterranean diet, and so with the new technology, I think that gives us more of a chance to sit there and go into a facility and order things and have things taken out or added or changed, so that, yes, I can get that new, the diet I need, from a station. By being able to order ahead of time too, from what we were talking about, is we can go pick up if I'm in a hurry and I only have just a few minutes to get something and I want to go sit outside. or I need to get something and go back to my desk because the cafeteria is full, or something. It gives us the opportunity to do different things. And I think from what Liz was saying too, that's something that they've got to look at, is to allow all, what are the possibilities? What does the customer want? What do they need? And so that gives them that choice.
Thank you, James. And same question to you, Laura. Are you seeing those kind of options from, supporting customers, allowing that flexibility too?
I think so. I mean, I will say also that I think one of the benefits of technology and using prepay or app ordering systems is, I think it alleviates what we saw a fair amount of before, perhaps, which was operators who were struggling with the accounting of all of that, the adds and the minuses, and what does that equal in the total. And so it kind of made the whole process, especially cashiering, could be quite cumbersome. And so one of the benefits I think that comes out of pre-order is, yes, I want to add avocado, I want to substitute brown rice, whatever it might be. Now the accounting and the cashiering and everything is done through that technology. So I do think that flexibility in menu ordering and being able to adapt is important. I also think the concept of branded concepts, not to overuse the word, but stations that are flexible within themselves and within the equipment is another way we're seeing flexibility really driven through design, so that stations, whether they're changing daily, whether they're changing quarterly, whatever, seasonally with menus, the choice be taken, but that individual locations, destinations, what used to be a station within a servery are now thought about as more independent restaurants. Mm-hmm. Kind of how James had suggested that all of the prep is done right then and there within the station, and they're much more independent and standalone. I definitely think that's key, and I think that the flexibility of the equipment being able to change out is important.
Thank you, Laura. Staying with you briefly, you mentioned earlier a lot of menus have been reduced. You're seeing a sort of menu optimization occurring because of the pandemic. Is there an opportunity through either through menu optimization or from new technology to make it easier to cut down food waste at the moment? And do you see that kind of having a long-term staying power as well? What potential is there to cut down on food waste and therefore manage that bottom line a bit better as well? There's obviously costs to be saved in reducing food waste.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely think so. I think we're also more mindful of it. If I don't have to waste, why would I? So I think we're more empathetic to being cognizant of it and being good stewards. So I definitely think that plays a role. I also think, James, I think you were talking earlier about salad bars and sort of that we're not really seeing so many self-serve anymore. I've heard some consultants talk about the death of the salad bar. I personally don't think it's going to completely die. I think it's going to morph potentially for a while. That's what we're certainly seeing. But I do think that changes how you think about waste. All of the self-serve bars that we used to have for convenience, maybe now are looking like those remote orders. And I think within that is an opportunity for saving on waste that we used to have before.
Brilliant. Thank you, Laura. Liz, can I get your perspective on how your company looks to monitor, measure, reduce food waste ultimately?
Yeah, it's a hot topic, isn't it, food waste? And I think it's right the way end to end, and that's the way that we're addressing it. So from the menu design, the cadence of dishes, what goes together, what doesn't, kind of the route to tip cooking. So making sure that we are using everything, looking at our sourcing as well to try and make sure that we're getting the best ingredients that work for the menus that we're designing. Our teams are reporting and measuring waste kind of back of house. But I think the thing that we're also doing is including the consumer in the whole food waste piece. This is something I saw a lot when I was in the US actually about 18 months ago, but having kind of where you're scraping your plates and giving people targets that you all get involved in. And I think that accountability across a kind of a workforce is really important to get everybody behind it. So I think making sure that people are only taking what they need and really thinking about what they're doing is really important. So that education piece, we've just launched, or we're just launching Eco Thursdays which is a platform for us to talk about in our business. So we have a Wellness Wednesdays where we talk about health and wellness, and then on a Thursday it's Eco Thursdays. But it's a nice platform to be able to talk about lots of different sustainability issues, maybe give people a bit of information they didn't have before, but also bring it into the restaurant and link it back to food and nutrition so it feels relevant.
Wonderful. Thank you, Liz. Rick, a question for you, carrying on Liz's kind of Eco Thursday theme there. How is energy efficiency, how are issues like food waste factored into how you guys are developing new products at Welbilt? Is it front of mind? Is it something you're cognizant of? Is it very important in design? How's it being factored in?
It starts with what we call our product roadmaps. So we look out 3 years across the categories and just imagine what the future is going to be like to make sure that our products are best in class. And so energy efficiency, whereas back in the day that was a cost play, now it's a sustainability play. So all of our customers have carbon footprint targets, and the biggest impact that Welbilt has on the planet is not so much the emissions from our factories, it's the amount of carbon dioxide released from the use of our appliances, whether or not it's electric appliances that are generating electricity with fossil fuel or gas-fired appliances. So it's a really big deal. And we can actually show now through connectivity and monitoring the carbon footprint and how it reduced. Same thing with food waste. I mean, that contributes significantly to global warming, and it's a waste. And so that comes back to digital forecasting, prepping, production management systems. We got to skate to where the hockey puck's going to be. Some of these projects are 2-3 years out, and it's important to be thinking about the equipment that's going to be available 2 or 3 years, not the equipment that's available today, because it's accelerating. So start with the product roadmaps, looking into the future, but imagining that there isn't a static future. It's a dynamic future, and the equipment needs to be able to meet the challenge that our operators want as the world continues to evolve from this pandemic and into the new situation that we're in.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rick. James, quick question to you on that front. Are your clients more mindful than ever of sustainability? Do they want to know more about energy efficiency in the equipment when you guys are looking to specify equipment for kitchens? Or is it more of a focus on cost? What are their kind of priorities?
Yeah, definitely focus on cost. They're looking at that, but I think most consultants, and I'm sure Laura would probably agree on this one, is that's what we do as a general practice. We're looking at sustainability, we're looking at energy efficiency, we're looking at multiple use equipment. Like Laura was saying, you don't have one piece of equipment that just does this and another one that does that. It's how can I get one that'll do everything, or not everything, but more than one task. So. But no, the clients are definitely looking at how much is it going to cost utility-wise. And I think one thing they're looking at too is very rarely do we get too much space in a kitchen to design in. Right. And when we do, we don't know how to do it, because we're used to having to put everything in that small shoebox now. And so from Rick's standpoint, yeah, they're looking at equipment that's multiple use that, you can do different things with, because that's what we're being asked to do now.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. A final question then to all of you. Can I ask you to just talk for a moment about what you think will be the most pivotal type of innovation for B&I food service operators as we move out of the pandemic? What are you most excited to see rolling out in terms of new equipment, new thinking? Liz, can I go with you first, please?
Yeah, I think we've touched on it already, but I think personalization in general is something that we've seen more this year with the app. And kind of pre-order and getting food where you want it, when you want it. I think that will continue. And I feel like we are only a step away from having some really nice personalised nutrition solutions. I haven't seen any completely work all the way through yet, but I think that would be fantastic. And then actually that will be truly added value, and that would be something that would be fantastic to get from your workplace.
Wonderful. Thank you, Liz. Same question to you, Laura.
The first things that are coming to my mind, and we've seen a number of products come out this past year, and it had been on the horizon, but around that remote order pickup location, I think we're going to see that design of a station really start to evolve. And then one of the things that I think we really haven't had in B&I, unless it was out of necessity, is food delivery. And I am thoughtful about whether there will be equipment, even pulling from like the hospital room service world, but will there be delivery equipment that comes out of it? But from my perspective, I think those two they're at least going to be changing for a while and becoming, a more defined thing.
Really interesting. Thank you, Laura. James, same question to you, please.
Yeah, I think from what Laura was saying too, is having that equipment, the holding equipment for the individual orders for people to come and pick up. We have seen many manufacturers that a year ago weren't doing this, and now they're deeply involved with it, and they have equipment coming out, and I'm sure it'll continue to come out more. It's exciting to see and to learn about, and to see what we can do and how we can make it work. And just the whole, like what you were mentioning too, Laura, about deliveries too. That's something we've been looking at, is do they take things to the other side of the factory and have just like a little kiosk set up over there for people, or who you can't get back to the main cafe and then back. Things like that we're looking at. That's a little bit different, and it's something's always new.
Thank you, James. Same question to you, please, Rick.
We covered a lot of territory, so I'll just sort of go into areas maybe that we haven't talked about. And innovation has a way of repeating and cycling. Beverage, we didn't talk too much about. It's really big. And in our business, it's the highest growth segment right now. And we were lucky to get in on the cold brew with the nitro, and now we've got stations that are mobile. They don't even require electricity. Blended beverage is a huge category because it's very healthy. It gives rise to an infinite number of blended beverage drinks. And it's something you can't really do at home. I talked about raising the bar, with food, and the packaged good companies have done that. But it's really hard to make a beautiful blended beverage at home without the technology and the equipment. And the equipment that does that, I call them invisible robots. It's kind of like the Tesla. There's not a robot driving the car, it's built in. So these systems actually have ice machines and blending and dosing and metering. I think the whole idea on the service side now is just to get more out of the equipment with predictive maintenance. You can monitor the on time of all the pre-components and change them before they fail. And the stainless steel generally doesn't wear out on our equipment. The controls wear out, maybe the software needs to be updated. So this whole notion of cradle to cradle, right? So sometimes we don't like that as an OEM because we think, we've got to sell less equipment. I don't think so. I think there's nothing wrong with upgrading our equipment, change the magnetron, change the heating elements, change the controller, and get more life of the equipment. So those are some of the things that I see happening, and I think the response and the bounce back of the industry is going to accelerate those.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you very much, Rick. On that note, we shall leave it there. This has been an exceptionally enlightening discussion with some superb first-hand insight from our guests, Liz, Laura, James and Rick, who I'd like to thank for taking the time and joining us today. I'd also like to thank Welbilt for their continued support. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and please stay tuned to fcsi.org for future events. Thank you.